Well, good day, Facebook family. Good day, YouTube family. Good day, friends and family. Welcome to Leadership Moments with Dr. J, Dr. Jermaine Johnson. Pray that you had an amazing week. Pray that it's getting off to a productive time for you, that you're able to get various things accomplished throughout this week. We know it's always exciting for me as I get to spend this time being a virtual teacher's helper with educating my daughter as she's in virtual school and making sure that she has what she needs during that time. So it's been good. Had the opportunity to be on a seminar today with the Global Fellowship with Bishop Neil Ellis and Pastor Jamal Brad with great information in regards to virtual worship, technology, various things of that. I just think it's very apropos for leadership and getting various tools or hearing various opinions and humbling yourself to be able to embrace the information that is available. And that's what I'm going to pretty much talk about today, just the blessing of leadership, the blessing and burden of leadership, the blessing and burden of leadership. Even as I was listening to the webinar today, getting great information from various sources, from a high level perspective, from a macro perspective, from a micro perspective, embracing the various information and being able to translate that information. And oftentimes we receive information from very respected or high level individuals, then we have to figure out how to translate that. And I remember even me in starting our ministry, one of the things that really helped change and transform our ministry was when I had the opportunity to go to a R.A. Vernon conference. Probably in the second year of our ministry, Pastor Keith Green and I drove down from Baltimore to Cleveland. I was a last minute substitute because I think his wife Cinnamon couldn't go, and I was able to drive with him, and we were able to go there. And the information was so great. For those of you who are familiar with R.A. Vernon, major pastor in Cleveland doing a major work for the kingdom of God. Literally, it was life-changing from Brandon, from being okay to be creative and finding your uniqueness. And for me, being a traditional guy, being translated and called into the role of a pastor of church planning, where it's almost like you're starting a new business or starting a new operation. The information for me was life-changing. But I knew on the scale that they were doing it on, that in order for me to be effective in my 25-member church at that time, coming from this 5,000 member conference, that I had to humble myself and allow God to show me who's doing it on the level that you're next on. And he began to connect me with people. And oftentimes, that's the challenge for people, that they can receive it from a high level perspective, but they can't humble themselves to take what someone may be doing good or some traits that they may be doing better, to receive the information from them. So today I want to talk about the blessing and burden of leadership. In my book, ABCs of Leadership, I highlight with the letter B, blessing and burden. And the premise comes from Habakkuk. I encourage you to read the book of Habakkuk today. It's only 3 chapters. You can say during the quarantine that you read a whole entire book, right? 3 chapters of the prophetic book of Habakkuk. And Habakkuk starts it off in chapter 1, verse 1. He just says something that literally, that's life-changing, that literally changed my life even as I was preparing the message some time ago. And anytime I think about the leadership of ministry or the leadership of business or leadership principles, he says this: the burden which the prophet Habakkuk saw. So I was like, that was a powerful way to start off the prophetic book, because anytime that you're doing something for God, or anytime you are a person of influence, anytime you are leading or guiding people, it is a blessing. It's a blessing. It's a blessing to be used by God. It's a blessing to have influence. It's a blessing to be a minister or a prophet or a pastor. It's a blessing to be a parent. It's a blessing to be a caretaker. It's a blessing to have influence. It's a blessing that people can rely on you to literally help their life become better. But not only the blessing, the blessing also comes with a burden, because the burden is what he saw as the prophet began to see various things from that elevated view. A few weeks ago, we talked to you about how we as leaders are in an elevated state, that our voice needs to be elevated, that the volume of our voice needs to be elevated. And more importantly, we need to understand that our value is elevated. Again, elevated voice, elevated volume, elevated value, elevated voice, elevated volume. And literally, Habakkuk knew that there's a blessing being a prophet for the Lord, being God's mouthpiece. But the burden is what he was able to see. Because when we are a leader, or we've been exposed to knowledge or have various experiences, there are certain things we can see and there are certain things we can understand that we can't even translate or that we can't even articulate. Ecclesiastic Solomon writes in chapter 1, verse 18, he says, "For in much wisdom is much grief, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow." Literally, I'm going to read it again. "For in much wisdom is much grief, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow." So in other words, as you increase your knowledge, as you increase who you are, the responsibility that comes with that is that the more you know, the more you're responsible for. And what a challenge that is as you're going forward, that you have the responsibility to act on, or you can't shrink your mind. Once the capacity has been enlarged, you are then responsible for it. And that's what Solomon was writing in the book of Ecclesiastics as he was reflecting on life. And in the latter years of his life, you can't take back what you know, right? So it's a blessing to be a Christian. It's a blessing to be a disciple. It's a blessing to be a leader. It's a blessing to be a parent. But it's also a burden based on what you see and what you are responsible for. Because the more you know, the more you're responsible, the more knowledge you have. And that's the thing. Even as I got off the seminar, throughout this time of the pandemic, many pastors who have much larger congregations than me, but because I'm a church planner and I'm creative, they have great respect for my ministry. They were able to call me, some who I call fathers, and they're major mentors of mine, able to call me to get various information based on our television broadcasts, based on the videos that we put out. They had questions, and they were able to humble themselves in the midst of the blessing and burden of leadership to ask various questions, right? To get information. Then I have something I'll call and say, let me check on them. Let me see how they're doing. Let me see if we can make ourselves available. But because of pride or competition or just some things just haven't just settled within themselves, they be like, "I'm doing great. Everything's good." I'm like, "Doc, I just saw this is not good." But you want to be able to humble yourselves. And I go back to the R.A. Vernon story, but I had to humble myself. And I remember getting connected. The Lord just began to put people in my space. And one of those people was Sean Bell. He Pastor Bell, Bishop Bell now, put him in my space. We connected. And what I did well, he gleaned from me. And what he did well, I gleaned from him, right? So even my cousin, he cooks well. But if he cooks well, I've been cooking during this quarantine. I've cooked a few things, but I don't consider myself a cook. But if I got a cooking question, because I respect what he does, I'm going to connect with him, right? So oftentimes people, because they feel like, or they may, it takes great humility to lower yourselves or to embrace the fact that, hey, someone else over here might do this well. So let me humble myself and get that information that I can be effective for kingdom purposes, right? So we see the blessing and burden of leadership as Habakkuk is being charged with being the prophet, but he's frustrated by what he sees because it's a burden, because the Lord has given Babylon, the people have fallen into Babylon exile, and the people of Babylon are literally, they don't honor God, but it seems like they're getting the blessings of God. So Habakkuk is frustrated with this. He's frustrated with it to the point where he's coming at God. He's frustrated in his prayer life. He's asking God's questions. And I want to tell you, as leaders, God is not afraid of our questions, even in the midst of this pandemic, in the midst of this hard season, in the midst of the blessing that you have to be a leader, but the burden that you have in dealing with this pandemic and trying to navigate through the uncertainty of it. God's not afraid of our questions. And as Habakkuk was going forward with the questions, he literally talked himself out of his funk. He talked himself out of anger because what happened was he was becoming bitter. And if we're not careful, we can allow what was intended to be a blessing, we can allow it to make us become bitter. And Habakkuk began to get bitter throughout this chapter 1 of Habakkuk because a bitter and hasty nation, he said, has risen up. And it seemed like, God, you're not doing anything about it. But he began to stay in the fold and he began to talk his way through it. And then he got to chapter 2 and Habakkuk has this grand revelation. He says, I will stand. And I want to encourage you, that's our point of reference today, as the blessing of leadership rests upon you. I want you to make the declaration that you will stand. And I'm standing. If I'm standing, I'm willing to stand in the gap. I'm willing to stay on the wall. And sometimes that means humbling myself. Sometimes that means making phone calls that I might not necessarily want to make, right? Sometimes that's a sense of reconciliation that we have to bring one to another. He had to humble himself, so it says, I will stand upon the tower. I will stand upon my watch, and I will wait to see what the Lord will say to me. In the Bible, it says at Habakkuk 2:2 that he says, write the vision and make it plain. So I encourage you right now, this season of your life, begin to write. As you go through the frustration, as you're living with the blessing of leadership, as the blessing at times can cause you to feel the burden, the weight of it. But yet, there's still a behavior of leadership that needs to take place. There's I'll stand, that there's a character element. There's I'm willing to do whatever it takes to go forward. And that's what I encourage you, even in this time of inconvenience, this time of life it coming in a new light, that we're willing to embrace the behaviors, that I can learn new things, that I can learn from people that I may feel like I can do things better than them. It really doesn't matter right now. I'm trying to lead the congregation. You're trying to function with your business, trying to navigate through your children, that you can come to a place that I realize that there's a blessing on leadership, but at the same time, I understand the burden in which we're responsible for. But we ought to demonstrate behavior. After you got it out, after you got your frustrations out, Habakkuk says, I will stand upon my watch and I will wait to see what the Lord will say to me. He says, write the vision, make it plain. They who reads it, write it on large tablets. As they run, they can read it, and it will not tarry, but it will come to pass. So I encourage you on today to embrace the blessing of leadership, your ability to humble yourselves, your ability to be creative, your ability to make a declaration that I'll stand. I'll stand through the difficult times, which seems as if we are in captivity by a foreign God, that we know the power of God. We know the might of him. But even in the midst of what is being allowed, I'm making the declaration that I'll stand. And my character reflects that, because you can't take back what you know. You know God to do some amazing things in your life. And I encourage you, keep growing, keep learning, keep positioning yourselves as we go forward into things. So remember, great leaders are always learning. In moments like this, we have to think on our feet and be creative. People want direction during this time. Even when times are tough, that's when great leaders step up. And everyone around us is motivated. We don't promote fear and anxiety. Instead, we help each other prepare for better times ahead, because we know that there are always going to be better times, that this trouble, that this storm will not last forever. And even as we are preaching and sharing in the word, we look forward to you sharing with us tonight at 7 o'clock. We were sharing from the widow at Nain. And as that son was resuscitated, brought back to life, the only thing he had was a word that the Lord told him, rise, arise. And at times when we're coming out of the storm, only thing we may have is a word. But that word is enough to restore. That word is enough to revive. That word is enough for you to have life to start all over again. So walk in your blessing, be able to embrace the burden, and you exhibit the great characteristics of the behavior that accompanies the blessing of leadership. So I encourage you today in that. Walk in your blessing, walk in the favor of God. Look forward to you joining us tonight at 7 p.m. On the same station, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, as we deal with the widow at Nain in chapter 7. I'm excited about tonight, so look forward to being with you. Thank you all for being with us today. See you, Sister Jan. the blessing and the burden. Good afternoon, Deacon Core, Deacon McKinney, God bless you. Deacon Janine, Sister Hacker, God bless you. Sister Jan, Brother Chris, good to see you, brother. This is your time. I'm sure you've been a great blessing to people with your resources, and Chris is very responsible for us. We paid him, we brought him in for training to help us get acclimated to cameras way back when, some about 3 years ago, when the Lord gave us the passion to go, gave us the desire to go back on television and go forward. Christopher Adams was someone we had to reach out to, had to pay him his worth to come out and do some teaching for us. Deontay Williams was somebody we had to invest in. We had to lower ourselves to make sure that just because we are knowledgeable and people may see us in this light, and you, Dr. Jermaine, you're supposed to know it all, we humbled ourselves and we connected with the various people. And these people has helped positioning us for this season of our life. They're pastors I reached out to. Hey man, you can come by, you can do some taping at the church if you desire. You can come. No, Doc, I'm good. I'll call you. I'm like, I can't. But so you want to humble yourselves to maximize the moments that things are happening. So once Chris, we are forever grateful for you. Thank you, and remember, y'all, it all begins with the word. Chantel, God bless you, Deacon Mary. Great to see all of you guys. But 7 p.m. tonight, we'll see you on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, as we shall share the word of the Lord. Remember, y'all, it all begins with the word, for the word is life. God bless you.